Hello and welcome to Blue Rain Gallery Podcast. I'm Leroy Garcia, here today visiting with two of my favorite people, Rick and Shelly Allen. They are glass artists in the Northwest. They live in a place called Cedro Woolley. I've been there. It's very beautiful. It's usually nice and rainy and green. Shelly was telling me that the weather over there is nice and sunny. So that's good. Maybe you're experiencing a little bit of New Mexico over there.
Yeah, we're trying to eat as many green chilies as we can.
Yeah, I'm growing hatch chilies and they look great.
Really? Nice. That would go good with all that crap you're getting out there. So
thanks for having us, Leroy. We're excited to see the gallery and to see you again.
Thank you. It's been a while.
Yeah, we miss you.
Yeah, we miss you too. But hopefully things will get ironed out here and we'll get the traveling back online. So yeah. Usually on these podcasts, I like people to tell us where you're from. So we'll start with Rick, and then we'll have Shelly tell us where you're from. What was your first experience with art? It doesn't have to be glass. It could be anything. So think about those questions. Let's start with you, Rick.
Well, I'm from, I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, grew up in Warwick. It's a little south of Providence. So I'm a New England guy originally. It's a nice coastal New England town. We spent a lot of time on the water out there as kids. And as a kid, I didn't, art was just not something I even thought about really, except for, cool way that action figures and models were designed. That was interesting to me, but I didn't really kind of engage with art, even though I was kind of a doodler all the time as a kid, as a artist. I mean, as a young guy, not even thinking about being an artist, I just doodled on everything, anything but to do homework or pay attention in class, really. But it wasn't until I got into college that I was studying anthropology and was taking, I took some art classes, I did some drawing, I did some ceramics. And I was originally just blown away that you could make something and get to keep it. And it was just this, having this object that was beautiful, and then start designing objects. It was a revelation that I could actually had the power and the independence to do that kind of thing. There was a little glass shop across the street from the shop that where the ceramic studio was. And so I watched a lot of glassblowers, had glassblower friends. And so that kind of started me on the journey of, being introduced to art as a professional artist. When I moved back to Rhode Island after school, I just happened to start working for artists. I wanted to be a ceramicist, and just my first glimpse of like professional artists living a life making art and being artists, working with Michael Shiner and Dan Clayman, and Jim Watkins, all lovely people and all doing very different, cool, interesting things. And so that's sort of the beginning of the, eyeing the world of art, and then being introduced to the larger world of art and what that entailed and what was good and what was interesting to me.
Nice. Now, Shelly, you go. Let's see what you have.
Well, I was born in Flin Flon, Manitoba, Canada, which is a town founded by a science fiction character named Flintabady Flanagan, and it is in the north of Manitoba, so it's up in the tundra. So it was barren rock. I was a mining town, so there really wasn't much there to do. So I think it was really good for building imagination. We played on the rocks and on the railroad tracks. One of my I have a really specific memory of the first time that I made something. It was during that time, and I was watching cartoons, and I think it was like the Bugs Bunny and the Roadrunner or something like that. I remember being so, I was so excited by these characters I was watching on TV that I tried to draw one, and I drew it on a piece of paper, and I thought, oh, that's not the way it looks. So I looked around and found a piece of plastic. I don't know what, my mom had a piece of packaging or something. And I took my crayons and I drew and held it up to the light. And I thought, wow, that looks more like the cartoons I'm watching. And I think I must have been only about 4 years old. I was really young because it was really rudimentary. And I still have that. I kept it.
Nice.
And I just remember specifically being just so excited that I could make something that looked like something that I really enjoyed looking at. I think also when I think back to that, I think that might have led me into finding glass and then finding that that's the medium that is most satisfying to use. And then after that, I drew and I painted for most of my childhood, teenhood. Went to Emily Carr College of Art in Vancouver and graduated with painting, oil painting and intaglio. And after that, I just was pretty unsatisfied with just painting. I started doing these really large paintings because I wanted to work more physically and become completely absorbed with what I was doing. And if I painted large, my whole peripheral was covered with the work I was doing. So I found that was what I really needed to do. And a friend saw my paintings and said, "Hey, you should work in glass," which seemed such a strange thing to me because I had no idea. I just thought that glass was, functional, like you make bowls or perfume bottles, things like that. But she handed me a catalog to Pilchuck. And
I think that's what we're going to explore next. But before that, I want to say the first time I went to your studio, I saw what Rick was inspired by, because some of his first forms were ceramic forms, but in glass, right? Where they like squished and manipulated a little bit. They're really cool. And then the first time I had Shelley show here, it wasn't just glass. It was these big, beautiful panels of horse paintings. And somebody likes horses for some reason. I don't know. We're going to get into that too. But okay, so let's talk about where your journeys converged. And you mentioned the catalog of Pilchuck. Is this the first moment you met Rick?
Yeah. I applied to go there, and I still went there not knowing what the heck I was going there for. But the second I walked into the campus, it was pretty apparent. I saw people working with glass in a way I'd never seen before. And I couldn't take my eyes off of it. And then this is where Rick was there during the session I was there. I was as a student, and Rick was a teaching assistant.
I guess you could say he stood out. And I say that because how tall are you, Rick?
I'm 6'8".
6'8", yeah. And Shelley, what's your height?
I'm 5'2". So
there's a great couple right there. Oh, that's good. So you met Rick over there, and tell me about the journey of all the whole deal from there to the William Morris, and then into your own creations and your own careers. Rick.
Yeah. So when I moved out to the West Coast and found myself at Pilchuck after being invited to be on staff, and so I was a coordinator for the residency program. And in the wintertime, William Morris works there. Basically, his whole studio was the campus, and it was very fortunate for me that they need a little extra hand. I got to work with the crew. I was cold working for him and doing a lot of finish work and whatnot.
So Rick, explain to us really quick what cold working is, because a lot of our audience have no idea what you just said.
Yeah, so cold working is basically it's the machining of glass. So it's cutting, grinding, polishing, carving, engraving, all that kind of work where the glass is cold or room temperature, and you're cutting it with often diamond tools or silicon carbide. In the case for Billy, I was, the pieces, a lot of these pieces, like Shelley's piece behind us here, would have plenty on there. It was extra glass that needed to be removed before it was finished. And so I would finish the pieces and acid etch them and get them ready for to be shown. And that evolved into my doing a lot of engraving work for William Morris, which ended up being the real fun stuff. So I do a lot of creative work on the work, which is great. One of the things that was really one of the big pluses with working with Billy is, we had a great team, very supportive team. And Bill was very generous about giving us extra time in the shop. So on the weekends, every Friday, I would, myself and Randy Walker would split the day, or Ross Richmond, we'd split the day and help each other out making our own work. So we got every week, we're in a routine of making our own work. And that was great. That was really important. And it was just like everyone was so skilled that we could just, we're all working for one another. We can kind of do whatever we wanted to. And that was there was no pressure really. We weren't making work just to show it. We're just making work because we're interested in stuff. And that's how I got started. It's like, hey, what happens if you blow into a bunch of wood, and it's like, wow, that's cool. Let's see where we can go with that. And, my sketchbooks were filled to the brim. And so I every weekend got to play in the studio. So that was an important, essential part to my.
Cool. Well, let's have Shelley talk about her experience from Pilchuck to William Morris too, and your contributions on that team. And then the next question you can be thinking about this is, let's talk about the community of glass and how glass is made. Shelley, you're a great artist, and so is Rick, but you always have teams, right? And we'll talk about that. So let's start with Shelley and her journey through Pilchuck and then to William Morris.
Well, I went to Pilchuck the first time as a student, and after 3 weeks of blowing glass there, I went back to Vancouver and I tried to find more classes because I was just completely obsessed. And I was practicing turning the pipe with my broom. It was just ridiculous. And in Vancouver, there was no classes that I could take. I even begged the one studio of glass blowers. I literally begged them, offered to pay them anything. And they still said, no, we're too busy. We're getting ready for our shows. So they couldn't. So our alternative was driving down to Seattle to take lessons at the Pratt Fine Arts Center. So that's what I started doing 2 times a week, I'd work in Vancouver as a graphic designer, get in my car middle of the afternoon, drive to Seattle, take a 3-hour glass blowing class, and then drive home that night. So it was just insane. It was 6 hours of driving, and but I was full, and I was in my 20s, so it didn't matter.
A lot of energy, huh?
But, and then during this time, I was taking really basic classes, just learning hand skills. And then Rick called me one day and he said, hey, Randy and I are working in the hot shop. We're working for Bill, and I've moved here, and I need an assistant tomorrow morning. Can you make it down here to work with us? And I just had no hesitation. I canceled my whole day for the next day and just drove down there at 5 a.m. to work with him.
Best phone call I've ever made.
Nice. No guts, no glory there, Rick.
I was so excited, one, that I got to work in glass as an assistant, which was just, my dream to learn more. And then plus Rick was such a nice guy. Even though I had only met him for a couple of weeks at Pilchuck, I just felt like he was already a near and dear friend. So yeah, it felt like a win-win for me too.
Nice. And so that was your transition into the William Morris team?
My transition to William Morris, it actually happened once Rick and I were married. I was working with Karen Willenbrink Johnson, who you guys actually you showed some of her work last year. And she was wonderful to work with. And I learned so much about sculpting. And she was one of Bill's firsthand people in the hot shop. And Bill got a really big project, and he knew I was there working with Karen, and that I was married and living in the area with Rick. So he asked if I could come in and help create. They were making, how do you remember how many? It was thousands of really tiny sculptures for these wall panels for a museum.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
And it was a really spectacular project, and the pieces ended up being just incredible. But so I was hired on for that. Bill often actually asked for my advice on colors and how to make pieces more painterly, which I felt really quite honored that he would, because at that point I didn't know too much about glass blowing, but I felt that was one of his strongest points, is that he looked to his assistants for where their strengths lay, and then he would ask and be very humble about asking too, which I still feel really grateful for him giving me the confidence with my color use. And then other than that, I was an extra set of hands running bits, just helping to facilitate his work.
Well, he was kind of mixed media too, and I bet you that's. Did you learn the skills from Karen and him? Like when I first met you, you were using some type of fabric to tie the legs of the horses and hook them into the body, right?
Yeah, and that is something I always beaded, and I was very did a lot of crafts when I was younger. And that was something that I actually started working on prior to seeing Bill. Like, it was almost synchronicity that I was beading small parts together, and then he started using beads. He hadn't seen what I was doing, and I didn't see what he was doing. It was just kind of just the, that serendipity, I guess is a better word.
Mm-hmm. Well, from my perspective and listening to your histories, I think those years, Pilchuck and working for Billy helped, especially the experimentation parts, right? Like Rick's over there blowing stuff into the wood, and that's great. That's where it all happens. But the cold working and all the experimentations were you experimenting with the frit and the colors with her as well after the engravings? Or were you mixing that stuff together in that team? Like, where did you learn all this, the textures? I mean, because some of those textures look familiar.
Well, as far as my degree was in anthropology, and my aesthetic was more kind of natural form. I've never been really a shiny glass kind of guy. And so with Bill, he used a lot of techniques with powders and scavo, which scavo is this compound you put on the glass while it's hot, and it chews away at the surface. It basically erodes the glass, and once you anneal it, it stops eroding, but it's had a nice earthy texture. So that stuff I was really drawn to, and blown into wood, getting all the kind of char on the wood, getting the impression of the charred wood in the glass. I really found it really spoke to me. So that definitely, there was so much I learned from Bill and the team about what I could do to get that stuff. And of course, we had all the crazy tools around for sculpting. With Bill and the team, there was almost this unique school of thought of sculpting that came out of the Bill Morris team. I mean, Karen Willenbrink is a phenomenal artist who could make. I mean, she was teaching Bill things because she was just in there all the time, like 7 days a week, kind of figuring out these techniques, as well as Ross. And so we all kind of were figuring out stuff. So it was sort of a collaborative in that way, sort of just like exploring stuff. And we were all like, when we were trying to figure out how to get Billy's piece to if Bill was trying to get to a certain place, it was all hands on deck, and we're all trying to figure it out. So all that stuff crossed over into our own work.
Yeah. And I just love the journey. That's the best education you could have, the ability to experiment and progress. So we're going to talk about, talk a little bit, we did a little bit on how glass is made. It's not just a person, it's a collective. And sometimes what I really loved about William Morris was his ability to create a team and use everybody's knowledge and interact it and then figure it out. So that sets up the foundation for you guys going on your own ends. Because I think William Morris, he retired when he was about 55 or so years old and stopped producing glass. And how long ago was that? Was that about 10 years, 12 years?
2007.
207. So at 207, you probably had a line of like, oh, time for myself to grow. And that's about the time I met you guys both at SOFA, Chicago. And it was really loved her work. And she was doing little elephants and little carnival pieces. And I was like, man, that's some cool stuff. This is great. And then I was introduced to the Rocket Man over here, and the mad scientist of them all. I look at you more as an engineer, Rick, in a sense, because you have your sketchbooks, but you're always tinkering with stuff. You go into your shop, you have 50 million things in front of you, trying to figure out how you're going to make something happen. So tell me about your journey into the subject matter that you create that's specific to you.
Well, I am kind of, I do like, I'm a problem solver. I like fixing things and figuring out how to get there. I have a lot of interest. So I try to, once my interest hones in on one area, I kind of follow through to get somewhere. And with the artwork, at a certain point, probably about around 2000, I started making, just for fun, I think I made a rocket ship for my nephew, who was very young at the time. Made a rocket ship and put neon in it, and and put little neon flames coming out the back. It was a blown glass thing they mounted on the wall, and that was just like a fun thing for my nephew, and I just it's like a little trying to figure out how, where do I fit in the art world and what I want to make. And I just started as just something I was interested in, because I have a sci-fi interest and a sci-fi sort of aesthetic with a lot of things, and just had this kind of old Jules Verne sort of thing that I kind of just came out naturally out of me. I started making these little rockets that were semi-functional. They had the capsule came off, and it was like this cookie jar or whatever. And I was like, these things are just badass, and just kept making more and more complicated. And I was like, I don't know why I'm thinking about these things as functional. They're cool. They're interesting objects sculpturally. So that was 20 years ago. And just started, it's like went from fun rockets to pieces that had, they were both metal and glass. We were, Jeremy Bosworth, who I've been working with for over 20 years, works with me, and he's just brilliant problem solver. Well, I was a kid that he's OCD and I'm ADD, and so we're kind of a nice combination where he can I can bounce around the studio and he can focus on one thing. And so the two of us have over the years have figured out a lot of techniques and jigs and whatnot, and so we combine metal, whether it's just fabricated steel or stainless steel, we'll cast steel, cast aluminum, cast metals, cast glass, do whatever it takes. And then we kind of just, it's also part of like extending from the Bill Morris days, and sort of is the idea that you can it doesn't have to, a blown glass thing doesn't have to be the end of it. You can cut it apart and take the parts and put it onto other things, or cut it up and make it into tiles, or wire things on, or glue things on, or whatever. And so that was very freeing. So we just it could be any material that we are interested in. And so we started playing around with that and just started building interiors. The interior thing became a whole new thing to me. It continues to be very exciting to make some beautiful interior, especially the simple little chair. That was revolutionary.
Little red chair.
Little red chairs. It's awesome, and I still love one of my favorite things in the world to do is make the chair. So that's
I remember my daughters coming up to me and like, well, how do you drive this thing? There's just a red chair. And I go, you have to use your brains, and they're like, oh, kind of stumped them a little bit, but what a great little flair to put in there too, right? But it makes you think about technology and things of that nature. And so let's talk a little bit about Shelley. Shelley, you've been very creative in kind of the same ways. And I like the diversity of your mediums, because you're integrating all kinds of things like he's talking about, but in different ways. Explain to us what those ways are, what you integrate in your work, and what inspires you to diversify within the mediums.
I guess the diversification in the mediums is a need to enhance each medium to its kind of utmost. Like, I think that glass looks better if it's beside another medium, it really enhances the quality of glass. I also love textures, which is a lot of the reason why I use horsehair and rock, why my glass has layers and layers of powder on it to create the overall pattern and depth of the piece. I guess in a way that I feel like because I come from a 2D background, I'm creating three-dimensional paintings in a way. So I like to incorporate a lot of things from around me to put into the one piece, like create a vignette in a way, have a rocky base, a creature that's in motion, something like telling a story, but not being too literal with it. Providing an experience for the viewer that's tactile and visual and maybe emotional and might invoke some kind of a memory to them. The process has come out of strictly experimentation also. Every time I make a piece, I don't want to rely on a recipe. I'll write some color patterns down only because I have to create other parts the same to attach to it. But that's the only reason. I don't go back to those patterns. I just want everything to be, although I'm planned, because in the hot shop you have to be somewhat planned so you don't waste time, you don't waste moves. I like to be more spontaneous with the work. So it comes from a different, I guess it just comes more from inside of me. It's just more of a spontaneous expression.
Mm-hmm. Another question for both of you, because you both have worked in collaborative ways with other artists. I know Shelley, you did a collaboration with Tammy Garcia, and currently you have something brewing with Angela Sweetberg. Can you tell us a little bit about the Angela Sweetberg project?
Yeah, well, Angela, she comes from a background of doing historical restoration of Native American culture. So that goes right across the board from garments to some ceramics to horse gear is what we're focusing on. And she's incredible. She uses thousands of the tiny seed beads and a lot of other materials to create these works or to repair these works. And she finds vintage materials so that the pieces remain authentic too. And she does a lot of work throughout museums nationally. And we met at Pilchuck also, which was really, really, once again, and I had this white horse head. Angela really wanted to have glass pieces made so she could do some beadwork to enhance them. And I had this white glass horse head that just didn't seem finished to me. So I ended up passing it to her, and she made this beautiful bridle, and which you guys probably remember. You showed it in your gallery.
Yeah.
Felt it was a really great success. And in our minds, we'd say to each other that we'd like to work together again. And then Denise called us a few months ago and asked if we could make that happen. So
I've seen one piece so far. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
It's nice. It was a great collaboration. I think a lot of our Native American art collectors in August are going to be thrilled to see that convergence. Let's go to another subject. I'm going to pass Rick up on the collaboration because I have a specific question for you. Give me two of your most, funnest pieces you've made for people. We won't say names, but maybe you can describe a couple projects you did.
Yeah, I've had some great commissions. Probably one of my most fun pieces to make is I don't do a lot of kinetic work, but I have a lot of interest in it. And I was asked to make a piece for a install in a home that had a stair landing and had these two alcoves, these niches that they wanted to put a couple pieces in. And one of the niches was they were building in it was a false door that went into it's like a secret door, went into the library. And they said secret door. I was like, whatever that is, I want to do something. So I made so I decided to go all out, and I made a rocket ship that had a interior with a chair, these kind of orbit. This was basically an orrery. These little planets with moons around them and rings, and so when you figured out where the secret button was, which was the hatch, the portal, you push that in there, activated this whole mechanism, and so the planets and moons would orbit around the chair. The chair would rotate. These rings were spinning. It was very very cool. And when the chair rotated around and faced the wall would pop free, and it was the entranceway to this library, which was killer. And it worked out great. I was very nervous that they had 5 very young boys in the house. I built it as burly as I could, but apparently it held up, so it was fantastic.
Well, that's good. Okay, and tell me the largest piece that you ever made, and how did you construct that?
The largest piece I made is a 15-foot tall rocket ship that I was. I had a show at the Museum of Northwest Art in Waukon, Washington, and they had this beautiful. They do have this beautiful round rotunda as you walk into the main gallery. And there's a skylight above there, and I always wanted to do something for that, and so I decided to make this, really huge rocket. It was too big to make out of glass, but I made it mostly out of steel. Basically sliced down. Jeremy and I worked quite hard on that, and we made the legs out of like I-beams. We cut down and re-welded and made basically, like, to get the sort of feeling of the transparency of glass and being able to have an interior. I did a metal mesh, a perforated exterior, so you can see it was transparent, translucent, so you could see inside. And I made a big 7-foot telescope that protruded through the exterior of the rocket toward up into the skylight, and it has with a small, but actually almost about yay big chair at the bottom of that. And it was super fun to make. It was lovely. I
remember seeing it. It was it was amazing. That's the biggest rocket ship I ever seen Rick make.
Yeah, and it's an incredibly beautiful space now. So I'm thrilled. It was really great.
Well, both of you have had such a wonderful journey, and we are honored and grateful that you have shown with Blue Rain over the years. Been a great relationship.
Been a pleasure.
I'd like to thank you guys for participating in our podcast today. I'd like to encourage everybody to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or iTunes or all the platforms, including BlueRainGallery.com under podcasts. One other thing we'd like to invite everybody to do is visit our print shop, BlueRainPrintShop.com, for nice interactive art pieces on things you can use every day. In any case, thanks for coming, you guys, and we'll see you next time.